Okay, hear me out. You don't need a luthier or a guitar shop to make your guitars play perfectly. With the right approach and a little patience, you can dial in your guitar exactly how you want it. This is how I do it: string change, action, intonation, the whole process. And I want to hear your approach in the comments, because every player does this a little bit differently. This is the very approachable art of setting up a guitar. Today on the bench is my Gibson ES-137. Now, I start every guitar setup by playing through every note on the neck. This is more important when you're setting up guitars that you don't play all the time, which this one I do, so I'm pretty familiar with it. But what I'm listening for is any buzzing, usually that's going to come from any sort of fret buzz. But I'm also listening for if there's something loose or some sympathetic buzzing sounds that could come from a loose truss rod or loose pieces on the guitar, which I actually find while I'm doing this, that my pickguard is loose. Here I am playing in different positions of the neck and feeling the tension as I bend on that 12th fret, 7th fret, and 3rd fret. I'm feeling the tension across the neck. There I can hear that. I'm getting a weird sympathetic buzz, and that's coming from that pickguard, so we'll have to fix that later. Here I'm using a micrometer to check the actual diameter of the strings. These are a set of 11s that are on here right now, and as strings age, they start to go out of round, and so you can get all sorts of readings off this. I think that high E said a 10 by now, but that happens because your strings get all wonky, and so that's why if you're doing any work on your guitar, or especially if you're setting any intonation, you want to do it with a brand new fresh set of strings on it. Now I'm going to plug it in and test the electronics to make sure I'm listening here for any scratchiness or any dead spots in those pots. With a guitar like this, it is much harder to do that kind of electronic work because you have to pull the pots out through those F-holes. You have to, if you're doing anything with the pickups, you have to take them out and fish the wires out through the pickup holes. It can be really challenging on a guitar that doesn't have access, maybe like a Tele or a Strat does. And here there's a tiny bit of scratchiness in the bridge pickup volume knob and tone knob, as you can hear right there. You know what? It is not too much that it's going to bother me. So I'm going to leave it. At some point I'm going to have to pull those out and spray them out with some contact cleaner. I like to use a little screwdriver like you see me doing when I'm testing the electronics. It's really easy to tell if the pickup is on or not, or being selected or not. If when you tap it, it'll be very clear. It thumps through the amp, where otherwise it can be hard to tell if you're just trying to use your ears to hear which pickups are actually selected. Okay, it's time to get these old strings off here. We'll loosen them up and cut them off. Always like to take a piece of blue painter's tape and put it behind the bridge on these ABR style bridges, that stop tailpiece. In order, as you're pulling the strings off and that tension comes off, you don't want that bridge coming off of those posts and then hitting the top of the guitar and scratching it. So doing something like that, you can also throw a little bit of tape on there to keep it attached to the posts. But if you're working with somebody else's guitar, it's always a good idea to do that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The best polishing cloth is just flannel by the yard. Get it in white so that you can see if it's dirty or if there are any little bits of metal or plastic or wax in it. It's always easy to tell on a white cloth. I really don't like those black polishing cloths because they can hide little things pretty easily, which you can scratch your guitar if you start digging into it, which has happened more times than I'd like to remember. So I'm just going to use some of the Dunlop 65 spray on this. It doesn't need anything too crazy in terms of cleaning. It doesn't need any buffing or anything like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and give the guitar a good clean. I absolutely love the burst on this. This is called the light burst on this guitar, and that curly maple top just looks so nice. This is one of my favorite combinations that they did on this guitar. They made the ES-137 from 2002 to 2015, And they did it in fairly limited runs from what I could tell. There's not a ton of these out there. They're really interesting guitars. They're thicker than a 335, but obviously not as thick as a 175. It is a semi-hollow body guitar, so the tone block end, which is mahogany, ends behind the stop piece so that that lower bout is open. It doesn't run, the tone block doesn't run all the way like the 335 does. So it's kind of in between there. I love the Florentine cut on this. I like the look. The pickups on this guitar are great. Yeah, it's just an awesome guitar. What I'm doing right here is I am tightening up the tuners. Now, I would recommend not using pliers like this. Use a nut driver. I believe it's a 1/2-inch nut driver. I could be wrong on that. But use a nut driver. It makes your life much easier and you have less chance of scratching the top. But either way, when you're tightening those up, you just want to do them, not super tight. You just want to get them nice and tightened down so that they're not going to rattle when you're playing. I'm going to clean the fretboard next, so I take blue tape and tape that off. Definitely get a piece over your pickup. As I'm using steel wool, then it's not going to stick to your pickups. Somebody told me about synthetic steel wool and how good it is to use on your fretboard, because then you don't have to worry about that very thing, those little tiny shards of metal. That sounds awesome. I have never used that stuff. So if you have used it and you like it, please let me know in the comments, because I would I'll have to give that a shot. You can get most of that tarnish and, finger junk off of the frets with your steel wool. I like to come in here and get in right between the fret and where the fret meets the fingerboard. A lot of times you can have buildup that gets in there that is kind of gnarly. Here's the deal with this, though, is that you have to be very, very careful. I'm doing this super gently. I'm taking a razor blade, a fresh razor blade, and just taking the edge of it and just really gently dragging it alongside there and just angling it ever so slightly towards me so that I am not pulling up the grain of the fretboard. You can do this hard enough where you actually pull up wood grain and then it leaves a mark there. So yeah, if you're using a razor blade on there like this, just be real gentle. After a quick clean of the fretboard, I am going to take some lemon oil and get a good amount of that on there. Usually it doesn't take too much, but I haven't conditioned this fretboard in a little while, so it's a little bit dry. I'm going to really rub that in there. I've said this before. I like to do it with my hand. Sometimes you see people using different tools to do it. I think that the friction of the oil in your fingers against the wood of the fretboard helps the wood to open up a little bit, and it allows you to get more of that oil in there. I don't know if that's really true, but I like the way it feels, and I think it does a good job like that. So I'm gonna keep doing it. Now, earlier I was talking about how the strings, as they age, they go out of round when I was measuring it, those old strings before I took them off. what can happen is the string itself starts to get a little bit wonky. This is part of why you got to change strings, is they start going out of round. They don't vibrate smoothly and consistently. Oh, there's that loose pick guard that is causing some rattling. I'm going to use some double-sided foam adhesive to get that thing to stick and stay down and not rattle. Anyway, the string, what that'll do, those out of round strings, is your intonation will be off, and so you tune up your guitar, and then as you're playing up the neck, it sounds awful because it's all out of tune, and that's a good sign that you need to change your strings. Another reason why it's not applicable, or there's not a good reason to set your intonation if you have old strings on your guitar. So always start with a fresh set of strings. You saw me right there. I'm trying to take some of that electronic cleaner and spray it down into the switch. That's not a great way to do that. There are tools that allow you to spray that into the top of a pot too, and I'm not a big fan. It doesn't really work as well as actually spraying it in the recess or in the body of the pot. Same thing as with those switches, is if you're really doing it, you got to remove the electronics and actually clean those out. Okay, time to put the new strings, these 10s, on to the guitar. Now, I have been playing 11s for a very long time on this guitar and on most of my guitars, and I recently have been making the move to 10s. After playing 10s on this guitar for a while, I think I'll probably go back to 11s. I like that a little bit heavier feel on this guitar. But, it's always nice to be able to jump back and forth. And as I'm putting these strings on, you're seeing me do the classic one over, the rest under, as I'm feeding the string through the tuner post, and then I pull it tight, bring it back to the next tuner, or about 1.5 inches to 2 inches past, and then I push it back to give me slack in the string, and then I tighten it up. The first coil goes over that string that went through, and then the rest of them go under. You want to make sure that the string is going under towards the headstock as it's wrapping up, because then that gives you the right break angle over the nut, and that is going to help reduce some of the problems that we run into when we're dealing with weird noises that come from the nut. And here I am tuning up all the strings, tightening them, and then stretching them out real good. I run through this 3 times. Generally, that's what it takes to get the strings to stop stretching. So do it 3 times through before you do any more work. Okay, so in setting up a guitar, first we're going to start with the neck. You want to make sure that the neck is set up correctly. So we're going to start there, and you generally want, as a rule of thumb, you want it as straight as possible while still being playable and without giving you fret buzz. So test the neck, straighten it out, and then play through it like I'm doing right there. You want to play through it and make sure that it's playing great, as it's feeling the same between like the 12th fret, 7th fret, 2nd fret. Play a riff on all those, and they should feel about the same. The next thing is the bridge. So you might need, right here, I am lowering the bridge a little bit. It was a little bit on the high side, and so I am loosening the strings on that side and then lowering it with my hand. I will say on this style of bridge, this ABR style, don't use pliers to turn those wheels. I have done that in the past. I've seen people do it, and it is a corner you don't want to cut because you can slip. You can mar the top of the guitar, or you can kind of mess up those wheels on that bridge. So don't do that. So it goes neck first and then bridge second. And with a bridge adjustment, you're going to be raising and lowering it depending on how it feels. Again, how it feels as you're playing up and down the neck. And you're also dealing with fret buzz as well. If you're getting buzz, you're going to have to raise it slightly. And if it's sometimes if it's too low, then it can be too stiff. You know, as you're doing bends like that, you can get areas of the neck that feel really stiff because the action is just not quite right. So you want to play with that until it feels comfortable and smooth across the neck, and that is in the positions that you are generally playing it. Now, some people like to brag about getting the action as low as possible, and often I find that when you get the action super low, that the neck feels really stiff to play. And when you're playing 10s or even 9s, like, it should feel super slinky. Even 11s on a guitar that's set up correctly is going to just feel really nice. You'll be able to bend. It's going to feel even across the neck. You're not going to get any fret buzz, anything like that. So after you adjust the neck and you adjust the bridge and everything's playing nice and even, it feels good across the neck, you're not getting any fret buzz, then we're going to move on to intonating. Intonating is super important. It should be done every time you set up the guitar, and that is the act of changing your saddles. You adjust the saddles to adjust your intonation, and basically what that is when I tune the low E, for example, open, it will be an E, and then as I press the 12th fret, that should be an octave up, and those two should be as close to the notes that they're supposed to be as possible. If your intonation is off, for example, if your intonation is sharp, then when you'll tune the open E and then you'll press the 12th fret and it will be sharp. So you can adjust that by adjusting the saddles front and back. The rule of thumb on that, how we do that, is you shorten to sharpen. So that's how I think about it. So you're going to shorten the overall length of the string in order to raise the pitch at the 12th fret. So if it is low, if I tune the string and then I press on the 12th fret, then I'm going to shorten. I'm going to bring the saddle towards the nut there. And here I'm just checking out one fret that I noticed a little bit of buzz when you really dig into it. This isn't going to bother me, but I just wanted to check what the clearance is with that fret against the string, which is very small, but my touch is generally pretty light there, so it's not going to be an issue. And that's it. Now all we have to do is plug it in and make sure it feels good and sounds good. Thanks for coming along on this one. Like I said, leave a comment and let me know how you set up your guitars. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and follow the channel. And we'll see you in the next one.